Hi everybody, I thought I'd just jump on here, show a couple of very rare records and do a little bit of a VC chat at my place. And the other day I posted this on Instagram, a record we've seen a zillion times. And I said I'd much rather listen to Amundell's Wolf City than any other album by Can, any album by Can. And I was expecting a big backlash, but of course a lot of people on Instagram remain indifferent, who like. But a couple of people agreed with me. Dan at Dots and Loops, Chris Cole agreed with me. The only other person who really made a comment about the two albums said, "I'll swap you my Wolf City for this." Now, I was tempted. I've got 2 copies already, but I was tempted. It's just one of those things. What do you think? Would you ever listen to Wolf City than any album by Can? I want a nice little one-word comment I got from Rachel of Rachel's Ghost, Galactus. Now, I looked it up thinking it was a comic book reference, and it was. And Galactus was a character created by Marvel in 1966 for the Fantastic Four series. A character who consumes worlds, sort of beyond good and evil, but has to consume worlds to live. Quite an interesting concept. And when you look at the picture of Galactus, the original drawings, exactly the same kind of helmet, the same sort of body armor, etc. And also a huge figure like this. And so now when I look at this record cover, I know it's actually based on Marvel comic books here. Well, not a hero, but a Marvel comic book character. And I just thought it was just an interesting image, but it's not. It's actually obviously based on a comic. So there you are, something we've all learnt, and we'll never be able to look at that cover the same way again. When I bought that record, this was inside it. I thought it's a bit thick. There's a nice bit of card with a really ridiculously easy sum on the back that obviously someone couldn't do in their heads. But I love finding this kind of stuff. This is obviously someone doodling while they're listening to records, and it's obviously based on Rock Bottom. So drawn in the 70s, no doubt, and just a fantastic find. I love this kind of stuff. I have a copy of Rock Bottom with someone's got all the drawings on the inner sleeve, on the inner bag, very similar, copying the sort of the weeds and the fish, etc. But anyway, a nice thing if you're into that kind of ridiculousness. Now, a record I put on the other day, the first time in a long time. We all know it, we all seen it, blah, 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 blah. I was just struck again, though, by its sustained intensity. And it's not only a sustained intensity. I mean, from the minute that you put the needle down, there's a real restraint to this record, to every bit of it. It's not like a lot of kind of like, funkier stuff where you might be able to lose yourself in the groove and you kind of loosen up and you go with the flow. It kind of holds you back. There's a sort of deep hold, and even the instruments are kind of restrained. Even the solos, 95% of the solos are very restrained. Even the guitar, you a fiery guitar and it's held back, and everything is kind of held back, and it has a sort of restraint which is unlike, to me, any other record I've ever heard, especially across this side of it, 2 sides of an album. I mean, just unbelievable. But it also has, for me, that sort of does conjure up that 70s street feel. There's something about this which is very unique in the history of music, I think. Obviously, when it came out, it was panned because people were always not doing jazz. I think it's probably the best jazz album ever recorded. Simply because it's not jazz. Just a great record, and I encourage you to listen to that one again. It's just brilliant. Now, a record I think I've only ever seen shown once or twice in the whole of my vinyl community watching, and I'm probably misremembering this. I mean, Richard McCook would have shown it because he's a huge fan, and I think maybe Rob Eisen, but this is a copy of Bolan's Zip Gun with a really strange die-cut diamond and a misplaced image, really, because that's what you get. You can't even see his eye. It would make a bit more sense here, or even there, but it's a strange bod's job. But I think it's a really interesting record. Now, it's Marc Bolan. You're not going to get guitar solos. Very rare did he ever do a guitar solo. And, you know, the music's going to be very similar from the very start of the song to the end of the song. There's not really any changes in the songs. There's not even dramatic verse-chorus differences in this particular album. But there's something about it from the very beginning to the very end that just flows seamlessly. There's no kind of pauses or let-ups or anything. There's just something about this entire album. And he wasn't working with Tony Visconti anymore. He'd moved on. He produced this himself, and I think he's produced this brilliantly well. Gloria Jones shines on this. Her voice is just marvellous and just makes so many of the songs with backing vocal. But it's really high up in front in the mix. Everything is so clear sounding. And you know, this is the only record I have in my collection where the last track on side 2 is louder than all the tracks preceding it. I don't mean in terms of, oh, it's a heavier track. I mean in terms of the pressing quality or whatever. It's like, blimey, you listen to it and all of a sudden it's loud, and it's like the beginning of side 1 on a record. We all know the records, you know, the grooves get a little bit closer together, don't we? You know, whether we want to admit it or not, and things get a bit quieter near the end of a side of vinyl. But not in this case. It's just like astonishing. What's going on here? And that's just some great stuff on here. You know, you're not going to get great lyrics. In fact, these are probably some of his most banal lyrics ever, you know. But there's some great hooks. And it was panned. Another record is kind of panned at the time, I think unfairly. Yes, it's not got hugely memorable, like, single cuts or whatever, but there's just something about the album as a whole that works. Anyway, I said I was going to show a couple of very rare records. Leaning over, here we go. A record you've all seen. This is Pussy Plays, or a band called Pussy, of course. What a name. An original copy on Morgan Bluetown. And this is the original bag as well. Here's the label. Really nice condition. The original inner bag, you know, it's just a company bag, but 269 here, February 1969. Now it's one of those records again where people pay £1,000, £1,200, £1,500 for a record in this kind of condition. And I'm going to say it like I say a lot. It's not a great record. It's okay. You know, it's a 3-star album. I mean, 2.5, you know. There's some nice-ish moments. But it does sound almost like they are a studio outfit. You know, they came together and released this one album. And didn't tour the album at all, didn't play live or anything like that. They did a few gigs, you know, but nothing really major. The record company didn't bother promoting it at all. So it's a curio. And I think if you're into any kind of music, and we're all guilty of it, if you're into psychedelic music, which is obviously what this is to a degree, people say proto-prog, you know, to allow some sort of... anyway, we all fall into the trap, I think, of if we're into psych music, we'll say, oh, this is a 4-star album, or this is a 5-star album. But if you compare it to another record of another genre entirely, then maybe it's not a 4-star album. Maybe in the world of psych records, it's a 4-star album. But maybe in the world of music, it really isn't. So whatever genre, we all do it, we all fall into it. But the reality is, for me, this is like, it's okay. But it's not very memorable. It really isn't. But that's an opinion, of course. All these are opinions. Borderline facts, or facts borderline opinions. It depends where you want to look at it. This is a nice record. Pulse for Planets, yada yada yada. This is one of the ones that you must have. You know, it's one of the top 3 or 4, which everyone tells you is the absolute essential. And for me, this is a really superb copy. It's 1963, Karajan, Vienna Philharmonic, and a lovely copy on Decca, the original recording by around here, blah blah. Full frequency stereophonic sound bag and a wide band. Just a lovely thing. Now the last record I'm going to show today, in my haste to get through this quickly, not to bore you all, you know, boring myself, it's this record, Pierre Fernier, The Cellist Hour, just staining around here. This record, if this was a UK pressing, would have a nice laminated sleeve. It's beyond Columbia. And it'd be worth at least £500, at least. And people pay that all the time for it, when on the very few occasions that it ever turns up. And I don't understand the reason for it, because, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I understand why people do it, you know, because you want a complete collection, so you want the original first press, etc. But in this case, I question the mentality, and I'll come to that in a second. This is one of those records from this period, this early period, where the inner bag has a piece of dowel. Now this is a US pressing. And you see this a lot. I've seen a lot of French LPs from the period have a piece of dowel. And what they did was they wrote the information that you'd normally see on the spine of a record on here, which is kind of pretty pointless when they also did it on the spine. So I'm glad they got rid of the dowel fiasco. Anyway, here's the rear of the sleeve. It's just Pierre with Gerald Moore, the pianist, who accompanies on like thousands of records, and actually did a couple of books which are meant to be really witty. He's meant to be a real funny guy, and I'd like to get a hold of those. A lovely record. I bought this for £1.99 in Oxfam. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. This is a US copy. Now, a US copy you can be able to buy for £100 or less. Now, the reason I say buying a UK one is kind of a bit sort of ridiculous is because although this is the Angel label, this is identical. The disc itself is identical. It's the same mastering numbers, it's the same matrix numbers, everything else is identical. Because back in the day, these record companies would send records over to the US and sell them over there under Angel Records or whatever else used to be. And so the records were identical. Not, you know, there are differences. Sometimes you'll find American classical pressings have American records in them, which are appalling, apparently. And to my ears, the few I've heard have been really bad. But look, you can tell by this is a UK pressing. Really nice, different colours of the grooves, different shades, I should say. You can see it's a well-pressed record. So why spend £500 at least when you could buy this for, say, £50 or £60 and it's identical? I know why. We all know why. Are we all mad? Anyway, I'll see you all later, and dear, if you got this far, I mean, I'm taking my hat off.